now. And Nigel, the floor is all yours. And here are your results from the polling. You should be able to see those.
Yeah, I've got them there.
Awesome. Great. Floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks, Evan. First of all, everybody, I appreciate you all jumping on. I know in these times we're all probably zoomed out by the time we get to the end of the week. So definitely appreciate you guys jumping on board to see this. I did ask Evan in the beginning to give us a poll just to give me an idea of who we've got on the call and what areas that we could benefit from this session that we're putting together today. So Michael and Kathy are also on, and they're helping us out to make sure this happens smoothly throughout the next 55 minutes. We do have a question that we're going to populate in the Q&A, essentially just asking you guys, what is your goal and what do you want to get out of this next 55 minutes or so? So I think we're going to populate that, or if you have an opportunity in the Q&A to put in there just what your intent, what you'd like to get out of this, because we can go many different tangents when we think about community engagement. And you know, I'm of the mindset based on, you know, looking at the poll, you guys are from all different parts of the industry, which is fantastic. So community engagement is happening, whether you enjoy it or you don't. It's going to be part of our roles these days. So let's just go through what we're going to tap into this morning. So essentially, I want to go over the definition of community engagement, because it's so varied. If you try and do a Google search on community engagement, you'll get a plethora of different types of answers depending upon the industry that it's in. We'll talk about the benefits of doing it. We'll set up a framework throughout this morning. We'll be going through a framework that may help in having a successful community engagement or forum. We'll talk about the different types of community groups. We'll talk about the engagement definitions and types. And this one, to me, is the next part is probably the most important part of any type of community engagement, is the communication structure and what type of individual you need to have that's leading that particular forum. And then we'll list some steps for success. And then I'm just going to give you some real case examples of what I've done. And hopefully that will help. Now, I'm not going to say, I'm going to say right now to everybody, I'm not a guru in terms of community engagement. I've had to learn. I've failed many times, and that's okay. But it's a learning process that we all want to try and think about. So while you may have some questions, I think we're going to put them into the Q&A. That way we all can see them. We'll try and answer them as we go through. Peg, I appreciate you're the first one up there. So Peg, you would get a prize normally if we were live, but I'm not sure what I can give you over the Zoom. So I'm going to hold back on that one right there. So let's just get into it as far as the definition. As I said, there's many different types of engagement that you can go through. That keeps popping up. Here we go, right here. So essentially, community engagement, and this, you know, again, you can pull up community engagement on the internet for multiple different organization structures, and it'll come up with a different answer. So this is what I like the most in terms of a definition. And there's many different definitions out there. Simplest terms, community engagement seeks to better engage the community to achieve long-term and sustainable outcome, processes, relationships, discourse, decision-making, and implementation. All right, so that came from Penn State, Department of Agricultural Economics, Sociology, and Education, funnily enough. So to me, that's really what it is. It's capturing a lot of different aspects of how we get people involved. So as we think about it and we want to get involved in community engagement, you know, I think at times we're dealing with the public, we're dealing with some people who have a very focused agenda, and it's challenging. You know, I'm sure you all agree at times it can be very challenging, particularly when you're talking about conflicts, resolution, and so forth. So why should we do it? What are the benefits from that? And I think that's, you know, always when I do things, I'm always looking at what's in it for me. Because if it's not going to be beneficial for me, why should I spend the time to do it? And I think the planning that we're going to go through today, you will see a lot of the benefits that we're going to have that you'll get in as we go through there. How to engage and looking at how to engage people in tennis and holding free clinics, but the retention is lacking. Okay, good. Keep putting things in the questions because we will address them as we go through. Okay, so if we look at why we should do it, and this has already come up in our Q&A, we want to increase participation. More people participating, there's huge benefits to that for us, obviously. Financial growth, you know, for our organization, we're going to generate more revenue, or even personally, just because we're getting more lessons or we're getting more out of it, of the program, and we can generate more revenue, both for the organization and ourselves. Improve customer satisfaction. Now, for me, that turns into the next thing, right, which is job security, greater ownership, and then the last one is greater community ownership and investment. Now, one of the things that I always talk about is, you know, having the entities that are involved. So the public, in my case, I work for a city, so the public having a little bit of ownership. Now, the issue there is how much ownership do they get? And with ownership comes at times entitlement. So we have to be careful on the amount of ownership we're allowing them to have as we go forward. So I'm just going to take a pause right there and just give you a little bit of my background so you can see where I'm coming from. I have been in the tennis industry for 30 years, 25, 30 years. Started out with my own academy in Australia and then moved out here because I married a girl from California. But as I started to get more involved in the tennis industry out here, it was through private clubs. I was director of tennis at private clubs, which had a membership, either an equity membership or it was a sole partnership. So they didn't have the equity membership. But as you know, being in the industry, that tends at times, you know, people tend to think that they can, I'm not going to say own you, have a large influence on how you have to go about your daily operation is probably a better way to put it. So, you know, all the engagement that I've had I've learned over the years, and it's been rough in the beginning, and I think it's got to a better point now. I now work with a public agency, and we are continually, you know, I think with anyone that works in a city organization, they understand that, you know, we're always have the mindset of the residents, because they believe that their taxes is what's paying your salary. So we need to ensure that they're comfortable with what we've got going forward. So they're the benefits that we want to look at as we go through, and we'll keep coming back to them throughout. Feel free to put your hand up in the question and stop if there's something that doesn't sit right with you or you want further clarification, because I want this to be as engaging as possible. All right, so what I started to do, and this is when my engagement with community groups became a lot more successful. Before I thought, oh, you know, there's a group, I'll just have a town hall and we'll figure it out, we'll get out what the problem is and we'll be able to come to a resolution. Well, that became, in one particular scenario, ended up becoming a very vocal group that then commandeered the meeting and was able to influence, and became more of a negative than a positive. So anytime I have any engagement with the public or residents or other groups, you know, I definitely put in a framework that seems to be successful. So what I'm going to ask of everybody right now, and I'll give you a minute or two to do this right now, just take a piece of paper, grab a pen, and then just write down these categories that you have up there, from community groups, purpose of engagement, desired outcome, form of engagement, community structure. Just put it in a table of some sort, that we're going to populate this as we go through. And these will be your community groups and how you're going to go about engaging them and what you want from the engagement. And we will populate that. So right now I'm going to check the Q&A. I'm going to give you a minute or so to get your table sorted out. But as we go forward, like I said, we will be populating this, and hopefully by the end of today, you'll have a nice framework with multiple groups that you can start working with. Okay. And if you have an opportunity, if you've done your table and you're ready to go, feel free to put in the Q&A if there's anything else you'd like to get more out of this session that we can address for you as we go forward. So as you're putting that table together, I just want you to think about what you've done already in community groups, what was successful and what was challenging. And again, as we go through this, put that in the Q&A so other people can share or perhaps benefit from some best practices that you may have had. Again, this is a learning experience for all, me included. So I'd like to see what else other people are doing as we go forward here. All right, let's take 30 seconds more just to get any more activity in the table that you may have had there. Okay. All right, so we're going to attack the first part of this framework, which is community groups. And you know, oftentimes we think about big community groups being the public, maybe being the membership, maybe being some outside groups, but it's really any group. So there we go. I thought it was important for us to really understand what it meant by community, so we know what we're dealing with as we go through. So in this, you know, just a plain definition from the Oxford language is a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic or common. So that's not earth-shattering to anybody on this call, I'm sure. But what I'd like you to do is start thinking about what community groups are you involved in? Who do you work with? And if there's a particular group in mind, start to add that into your community group column in your framework. Okay, so it should see something like this. And again, the ones that I'm putting in this in my framework is somewhat, well, some of them are real, some of them are made up. But as you can see, I've got multiple groups here that I have to deal with. And again, back to my current role, yes, I started as a tennis director for the city of Fremont about 2 years ago. I now am responsible for every sport, every field rented, every court in the city. So I've got quite a few different community groups, and being organized in this fashion really helps me. So populate your group right there. Residents, so I'm just gonna go through mine and give you an example of what they are. Residents near satellite courts. I have 46 courts, I think 46, 47, and multiple sites around the city. We have one major facility that has 23 courts that I'm based at, but I'm responsible for the other sites. We don't have anyone there. So I need to be able to find out what's happening there, and the residents of those sites do that for me. Then, of course, we have our USTA captains. There we go. We have our USTA league captains. I'm sure everybody has that as part of a group that either they belong to or they need to liaise with. And of course, residents, that may be membership for you, maybe parents, if it's part of a program, a junior program. I also put family in here. I put family in here for my benefit. And you'll see how this is expanded as we go through on the framework. So that includes my wife and my 2 kids. And yes, they are in terms of a community group that I need to engage with. And I go through a similar structure with them. And that seems a little over the top, but I can assure you it's very, very functional and definitely helps. All right, so that should give you enough time to populate the community group right there. So we're going to move on to the next part of community engagement, which would be engagement. So this is a definition that I pulled up just from dictionary, which is the one I like the most. If you're engaging or engagement, it's to occupy the attention or effort of a person or persons. So I'm not too sure how you feel about that. Again, put something in the chat if you want to clarify. But I also wanted you to put in there, what other words or phrases would you describe engagement? So take a little time here, because how your perception of engagement may shape how you complete your framework. So let's just get a few answers here and there. We'll put it in the Q&A of how you think you may, oh, looks like we've got it in the chat right there. Involvement with a purpose. I like that. Okay. Well, there's my friend Justin. He's going to partner with municipalities and for affordable program. How you doing, buddy? How to get high school players from team where there is no programming. There is. All right, good. So now that we've got a few comments and answers in there, simply for me, it's really just to activate a group with similar interests. And how do we go about doing that? And so we will get into the hows a little later on. We definitely know the whys, and now we're setting the framework to put us in place right here. So let's move on to what your framework will look like now. Okay, so we're going to populate the framework that we already established, and it should look a little something like this. All right, so my example in the beginning was residents near satellite courts. I needed to develop a relationship with these guys because they are my eyes, and the outcome is that they'll let me know by being my eyes out on those courts. USTA league captains, the purpose of the engagement was discuss a player fee. I want to increase it by 25. I'm just making these up as we go through. Although we did increase it by 20, actually we increased it by 35 there. Residents, we want to market the program, we want to increase the participation, and then increase family time, designate family time. And again, I'm showing you that last example because that could be anything that you want to do, or any group you want to engage and have a sort of a definite outcome to. So go ahead and populate the purpose of engagement with those groups that you've already indicated there. And again, this is for you. You don't need to turn this in at the end of the day. And then look at what your desired outcome is for that. So, and while you're doing that, again, if you want to put some things in the chat or the Q&A, if you've finished that area, feel free. Okay. So as we look at the Q&A and what people want to get out of this session today, it's a lot about really the process and how we go about getting people engaged. And we will address that a little later on and how to go about doing that. But keep putting in the Q&A if you guys have any other things you want to establish through this process. All right, so hopefully you've all got to that point of filling in the purpose and the desired outcome. Now let's talk about what is the structure in which you're going to do that. So essentially the form of the engagement. And you know, the form of the engagement will really depend upon the type of group and the desired outcome. So when we establish a group that we would like to work with, or not, maybe we have to work with, I should say. And let's take the case of the USTA league captains. I want to change their player registration fee that the city takes, that we charge each player. I want to increase it by $25. If I sent that out via email in a thread, I'm going to get probably every captain responding in a manner that's not going to be productive for me to achieve the desired outcome. So we really need to think about how we go about the format based on what the outcome is. If there's anything that's kind of a tense issue or a conflict, what I've done in the past, and again, this is up to you, but what I've done in the past is avoid town hall type structures. And I know we alluded to that at the beginning. Typically in a town hall structure, you may have an individual that is very quiet, but because there's someone else that is vocal, it empowers them to rally and become part of that inhibitor, I should say, in the process, which leads to no productivity. So depending upon the outcome, depending upon the issue or the situation, you may want to think about how you go about doing these forms of engagement. One thing we've engaged in a lot here is bringing in subject matter experts, people who have a lot of knowledge in that particular area. We will engage in meetings with them, group meetings with them. That could be a focus group. I like to differentiate between focus groups and subject matters. The focus group may be a group of people who are focused on one particular topic, however, may have very varied backgrounds and experience within that. So therefore different from a subject matter expert. Again, sensitive issues may need to be one-on-one meetings, phone calls, conference calls, and obviously we have in this day and age a lot of social media, but also a lot of Zoom calls, which we can also entertain as well as we go forward. So there are different types of community engagements that we've utilized here that have been successful. Go ahead and put in the, let's utilize the chat, I guess. What other forms of community engagement you've had success with that we can share, and we'll discuss it as we go forward with the group, so everybody can learn from each other as we go forward here. So think about the types of engagement that you have, that you'd like to enjoy in a specific group. And we're going to now put into our framework the type of engagement that you may utilize for this particular group. For example, go back to my framework here. So it's based on the satellite courts. The residents are going to be my eyes, right? So they're going to help me out and let me know if anything's going on in the courts that shouldn't be, because we don't have staff out there. So the form of engagement, and this actually is what I did about 6 years ago. We sent a letter to the individuals that live nearby. They had all my contact information on. Then we asked them to call us to help out, or at least let us know how we could help them, right? So within that direct mail, what's important for us when we think about community engagement, it's great to send out direct mail to create awareness of something that you may be promoting, or something that you may want to get involved in, or have that person be involved in. But without any follow-up on that, it really doesn't go anywhere. And I'm sure there's some marketing gurus on this call today. You know, from what I understand, direct mail response is between 1% and 2%. So not very high, but when there's a call to action and there's a follow-up, the participation of that and the mileage on that seems to be quite high. So in this particular situation, we sent a letter to the individuals. I actually hand delivered the letter. I didn't knock any doors because we didn't want to, think the city was coming down on them for any reason. So then we followed up, had them to email us, and we followed up with a phone call. And now what I've got is around the 6 sites, a good relationship with all the folks out there. And they let me know when we have anything that's happening on the courts that should not be happening. One of the things that we are challenged with is having coaches out illegally teaching. And that is, now we don't have that because the residents contact me right away, and we can go and put a stop to it. So that was one of the things that we've done. I noticed in the chat there was Trinell had flyers for local schools with programmings, meeting with his kids at school lunch. So again, a great example of how, if you can pull that up in the chat, of how the follow-up part of that, right, is. So I'm sure Trinell had flyers that went to the schools, but then there's a follow-up portion of that. So anytime you do any community engagement through direct mail, there's got to be a follow-up portion to that. The USTA leagues, we had focus group on that. The focus group was players and captains, and the process that we went through made it easier for the captains to facilitate the players paying a fee. But we had players in there as well, and we also had people who were residents who played socially who did not play on our USTA league teams. So we wanted to get an understanding of how and what fees and how we can go about it, and it became very successful. Obviously, the residents, you know, when we're marketing our program, we would go to community events. I remember when we started here, there wasn't a lot of Red Ball happening in the city. So what we did is we went in and any event we had, even our beer and wine festival, we had a kite festival. We had a trick or treat event. We would take a Red Ball net, map out a court, and I would take over my big 5-foot racket and play with anyone that wanted to play for a couple of hours, which was quite a workout, but definitely worthwhile. And we've got people engaged and really understood what we were now trying to achieve. Our increase in our participation went up as a result, obviously. But getting back to what Trinell was talking about there in the chat, the follow-up on that is really important, right? So as people came in, they put their name down for who was next in line. We got a contact, we followed up, let them know, hey, we met you. This is our next thing that we've got if you're interested. And if you're not, you know, no problem, we'll take you off our mailing list. So, and I think that's important for us to do. And then the family one is, it's kind of comical that I've got this in here, but anyway, we'll keep going through it. So we had a group meeting with the family, my kids and I, and we talked about when we could get time around, because pre-COVID, they were all 4 or 5 nights a week. They were both out. Both my kids were out on sports. So we never had any time. So then we'd have to carve time. And this was a meeting that we had through. And again, this is just showing you the example of the community groups and how to go through the process. And don't be, I guess, don't be blindfolded by who is a group that you could follow the same process through. So hopefully that's given you enough time as I've gone through it to get down some details there in your framework. I think the next piece that we're going to discuss is really the crux of how a successful process could be in terms of community engagement. So let's, here we are right here. So again, it can be different depending upon the purpose of the engagement. So the form of the engagement could be different. So could the communication, and they sometimes go hand in hand. So I broke them down, and this is just the way I broke them down. You can break it down to whatever suits you. I do a lot of stuff that's very much guided discovery. Obviously, I've got an agenda and an outcome that I want to get to. But I think if you go through a guided discovery process, you're going to get a lot more buy-in from your participants, and whatever the group is, right? So whether it's staff or whoever it is, letting them be part of the process is certainly essential. Now, I call this individual, whoever's leading this process, I call them the controller. So they have to control the process, make sure it doesn't go off into different tangents, make sure they're controlling the communication and the flow, so it doesn't get into an area where the desired outcome is not yours. So I call that person the controller. All right. And then another form of communication is a presentation. This to me simply is conveying information, and a lot of what we're doing right now is I'm conveying information, although I'd like it to be as much interactive as we possibly can, which is why we're asking for you to put in the Q&A and also in the chat anything that pops to mind. So that may be just a presentation. We did presentations here and at my previous private club. Again, Red Ball and Orange Ball was new, and we were introducing it. So we would do presentations, and this is off-goal. This is not a demonstration. This is a presentation that would be just like what we're doing right now, a PowerPoint leading to the benefits and why and how to and all that sort of type of stuff. So as we go through this, think about the type of person you may be as we go through all these different forms of, type of individual that may lead your presentation. So another form may be in a feedback. Okay, that could be in a town hall type structure when you're presenting a new option and you want to get feedback from that. Right now, the city of Fremont is going through a master plan development, so we're seeking feedback from individuals. And again, that's different to, hey, I don't like the courts being run this way. I want to complain about it. It's more about give us feedback or solutions that you think may be helpful for us as an operation structure, but also to help the community. And I call that individual a navigator, right? So they're navigating the feedback. They want to extract the feedback. They want to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to speak and have their voice heard. And you all know when you're in front of a group that is in a form of a community engagement of a town hall or something to that extent, or a large focus group, there's always 3, maybe 4 individuals, depending upon your group size, that are very excited to hear themselves, very excited to convey their view. And at times, unfortunately, I think some of those individuals feel like they're the only, their view is what everybody else is thinking, which is, I think is challenging. So definitely need a navigator to navigate through that and ensure that everyone gets that opportunity to speak. All right, so the next one we have is a mediator. This is when you get those sensitive subjects or sensitive topics, and you need a mediator to be able to pacify. I'm not sure if that's the right word. Make people who have a conflict, who are bringing it up in an aggressive manner, make them feel heard, make them feel comfortable, make them feel that they're on their team. And then be able to find out, if there's anything else beyond what they're telling you. Because at times, in those situations, you may not find what the root cause is of what they're discussing. So they may need to have someone that has mediator skill set. And then, of course, the demonstration, and this may be more of your event situations, going to the schools, for example, and mentioned only meeting them with for lunch, but even beyond that, going to lunch and playing with them. And, I love doing red ball games. I love playing, even with our older players, our tournament players. I love playing red ball tennis with those guys. But doing a demonstration, you need to have someone that's more of an entertainer. Okay, they're not going to take on a lot of questions. They're going to be delivering the demonstration and get people involved. It's almost like the leader in in a circus, the entertainer, right? Or someone who's doing a TV show where there's comedians and you're trying to pull out information, right? So you need to be the entertainer. And again, if that's your role, then that would be what would be expected in these types of events. So I did allude to a couple of events that fit very well with these types of individuals, but I also want you to do a little self-reflection. Excuse me. I don't mind doing the demonstration. I love doing the demonstration, actually, to be honest. The conflict resolution, I'm learning to become better at that. Initially, back in my early days of my career, I wanted to justify my position if someone had a conflict or brought an issue to me. So I'm not the ideal person for the conflict resolution. I do feel like in the navigator and the soliciting feedback, I am good at that. And that's something that I like, I feel comfortable doing. And many of I've seen a lot of PTR folks on this, and I'm a member of both USPTA and PTR. I am a trainer with PTR and certifier. And it's always a great opportunity to have a guided discovery and controlling the situation and do that. But that takes practice and it takes time. And again, recognizing your own strengths will determine what forum you put yourself in, or if you get someone else to come into that. Great comment, Peg, again. Conflict resolution is hard. To me, it's one of the most difficult challenges, I think, in any of these community engagements, particularly when there is a negative that we need to address as we go through. So we should be getting close to completing our community engagement. But again, look at all these things, the controller, guided discovery, the presenter, the navigator, the mediator, the entertainer, and fill out the next part. Take some time. My mouse is gone. Take some time to fill out the next part of your framework. So it's the final column, which is this communication structure. So in mine, we had, essentially on that satellite course, we had some subject matter experts, if you will. And the reason I called them subject matter experts, they were residents who were right there, who could give me definite that experience in whether those courts are being utilized for lessons or if it's just a dad or a mother and their son just, doing some drills. So they were able to differentiate between the two. All right, so take some time and just fill in those last pieces. And then we're going to, once we get to that point, we're going to discuss the steps for success. And this, to me, is probably the meat and the potatoes of what we want to do for any community engagement. And then we'll have time at the end, you guys, to open it up to maybe come up with some ways in which we can help with some situations that you may want to address or have a better process in how you engage in that particular community group. Okay, someone put in the Q&A, which is a great question, how to get high school players for team when there is no programming in the area until high school. So, and I'm not too sure who put that in there. I'm going to ask that individual if you can just elaborate on the, how do you currently do that? How do you recruit players currently? What are your forms of communication for them right now?
Yeah, so if we can have that person just raise your hand, we can go and allow you to talk, and you can elaborate on that question a little bit more. So, because there's an anonymous attendee, so we're not sure who made that. Here we go. Trinell. All right, so I'm going to allow you to talk. All you have to do is unmute your mic, and you can go and elaborate more on that question. So here you go.
Okay, hello. Thanks for answering my question, or at least opening it up. I also coach a high school team, and for years I'm the one that also did the flyers, goes to the cafeteria, does that kind of stuff. In our schools, there's currently organized play, competitive play for all the other sports: cross country, field hockey, volleyball, soccer. But there's nothing with tennis until 9th grade. And we live about an hour from an indoor facility. So our kids are pretty much just summer kids that we do things with and then get them on the high school team. Well, now it's become more and more difficult, and the school is, of course, not going to give us any more money. We used to have USTA leagues, but now there's nothing really in the area except for an hour away, more than an hour away, really. So I'm just open for any suggestions as to how we can do programming here in our little local rural community.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chanel, and I'm sure you're not on your own in that category. That tends to be. And Justin, who's on this call as well, I'm sure he knows, being on the National JTT committee, we struggle with getting kids into JTT and also any other forms of programming. But it seems to be what I've experienced is, and we have it here, they do their high school, then anything beyond their high school is a stretch for multiple reasons, right? So if we could ascertain what the reasons were, or the challenges and the barriers for that, it's going to be different. So you need to offer different things for different people. And that's where it becomes a lot more challenging for you guys. I have the luxury of courts in California, and we have great weather all year round. I can do whatever I want in terms of programming and things like that. My suggestion would be we start at the end of the season, and we start bringing the parents in, do a focus group of parents, and how we can tap into, because what you will have in that scenario, you'll have additional ripple effects with the parents talking to other parents and other parents and other parents and so on. So that would be the direction I would start during the current season. Start working on a framework on how you're going to build for the next season, and utilize the people that are in the current program to help you build that. I'm not too sure if that really answers that question, but that would be get the parents, get the community or that group involved while they're still there.
Okay. All right.
Does that help, Janelle?
Well, sort of. Right now, we don't have too many like younger, like freshmen, sophomores. We don't have many, three, four. And the team is mostly seniors. And I struggle to even get parents to come to matches. Well, of course, with COVID, they're not supposed to, but we do anyway. I mean, a few do, because we just play on the high school courts. But, that's certainly, I can try to engage. I do have a manager who's in 8th grade, and I can utilize her parents.
Trinell, have you gone to the middle schools or junior highs, whatever? I'm not sure.
Yes, that's exactly where I do the flyers and the school lunches and and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
We do a free tennis camp during the season and also in the spring. The kids come, they love it, but they'll go out for the other teams because they're already on a team.
Right. So one thing we've done here, and it's actually one of my case examples towards the end, and we'll see it, we'll go through a little more detail there, but I've gone to the schools, I've gone to the ADs, I've gone to the PE teachers, and I've trained PE teachers in the city here on how to do tennis so they can effectively do it, and hopefully we get some flow over. It hasn't really been successful as going into the schools myself with my staff and running a festival and putting rackets in hands. And I think that's where we started to get a lot of participation growth when we put rackets in hands. And we would actually, like I said, we would actually go to the school and we'd do back-to-back time slots and run 1,000 kids through one one school. So flyers are great, the communication is great. Getting them physically to actually try that. And we did it with a red ball. We had caution tape from basketball to basketball court. They all realized with the red ball, they can actually do it. And that's how we started them from the beginning. And I think that maybe a way in for you to get them started earlier. I think that's what I'm understanding is we need to start a little earlier in your process.
Yeah. We do have one PE teacher who we have a net generation program in one of the elementary schools. But certainly it would be great if we could expand that.
Yeah. And then of course, after they do that festival, there needs to be something for them to go to. So.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Good question. I like that feedback there. Let's move on to the next steps that we want to get involved in order to ensure that this is successful. So we've got the framework. Now we're going to go through the steps. Okay. So first thing, you need to determine what the target audience and who the key players are. All right. So I'm going to use the USTA captain's example. The target audience was USTA players. I want to get a higher fee from the players. The target audience really is the captains because they initially they designate they were actually charging their players and then paying a fee. So we wanted to change that. So it became the captains. The next thing was we need to qualify the attendees. So town halls, festivals, events, they're all great. But if you have people, for example, if I go to a baseball tournament, because again, I run all the sports and we have baseball tournaments here that a vendor coordinates for us. If I go to the baseball tournament and put up a red ball net for a 14-year-old boys baseball team, I'm probably not going to get a lot of events. So the attendees of that event aren't going to be great for what my purposes are. Let people know ahead of time what the agenda is and the rules of communication. I think that's essential, particularly when you've got a sensitive topic that you want to discuss. And the agenda obviously doesn't have to be so formal. It can be more or less, hey, we're going to be talking about this. We'd like to get your feedback or whatever that is. On a demonstration or event, we're going to be out there. The agenda then becomes come and try tennis. We want you to come and have a taste of how to play or whatever it may be. So that would be the agenda. So, and again, I use those examples because you can have an agenda and a process for anything that you do, and that needs to be communicated. And this comes back down to our communication. We talked about the types of people that we were looking at. We talked about the controller and the navigator, the presenter, the mediator. Make sure you have the best lead for that format. Otherwise, in my opinion, community engagement gets left behind, or the ripple effect of community engagement gets left behind when you don't have the right person leading it and you don't have the follow-up for it. So let's go. And we did talk about the follow-up a second ago. We'll get to that again. This is always important, have someone take notes that's efficient, that can capture all viewpoints without bias. So again, we want to ensure that people are able to have their view, have their turn, and we also want to recognize that and capture all of that. Even when we do demonstrations here, and even when I went to the schools and we did festivals, I had one of my staff would come and they would take notes of what went well that day, what we did, what we could have done differently. They'd get feedback. So they'd be interacting with people. Hey, what do you think? And how, do you like this? Would you like to join? Would you like to play more tennis? And we'd get feedback as we would go through. And that's really important for us as an organization to know if what we're doing in community engagement, is it hitting the mark? Is it getting the best results for the amount of time that we're spending? And, as you could imagine, I'm sure you all are as well, we don't have a lot of time in the day to get productivity to a high extreme. And certainly for me, with running all the sports here in Fremont, I don't have a lot of time. So my time, if it's not getting a decent ripple effect, then I have to question the time that I'm spending. So just keep that in mind as we go forward here. And then this is really, really important. You want to thank everybody for their input, for their participation, follow up with notes. If it's a town hall meeting, you definitely want to get everybody's contact and let them know, hey, thanks everybody for your time. This is what we discussed. How did you, and then also ask them for additional feedback that they may have thought about it post event. Now, if it's a demonstration, we would hand out thank you notes at a demonstration. Again, one of the events that we did where I had my big racket and I'm playing red ball for a couple of hours, I would have staff there and they'd say, hey, here's a thank you note thanks for trying out tennis today. We hope you had fun. By the way, don't forget, we have programs over here that you could take advantage of if you'd like to do so. Oh, sorry, went too far. Oops. Bear with me. That went way back there. I was looking at the chat at the time. All right, so we'll get back to where we were. So that was the follow-up part of, there is following up with the participants and making sure that they know what's next for them. And I think that's, if we're referring to participation in community engagement, there's always got to be something that's next for that individual. And we need to convey that. And it's going to be part of our marketing, part of our development, part of our growth is what's next for this person. And I can't tell you how many times, and I failed at this miserably in the early days. I would do a demonstration, on-court demonstration. And everyone would come out and they'd enjoy it, they'd have a blast, and I wouldn't give them anything to do next. So I'd have someone that's super excited about, hey, I just had a great time playing tennis. And unless they really try to push the envelope and find out where they could do it again, we would lose them. So I think that's a huge part of the success portion for what you want to do in terms of participation growth. So I'm just going to go through a couple of examples of that I've had success with. Then we'll open it up. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in there now, and we'll answer them as we go through. So we wanted to increase our youth, particularly our summer camp numbers. I'm in the and I've been involved in, on the tour. I've been on the tour. I've had kids go to scholarship, all that stuff. But right now, my main focus is recreation, just getting kids introduced to the game, and it has been for the last 7 years here at the city of Fremont. So when I started here, we had 140 kids coming to our camps during summertime. And that may sound a lot, but it's really not that lot when you consider the size of Fremont. Fremont's quite a large city. It barely was 0.001%. So to me, it was a complete failure. So we wanted to increase our summer camp numbers. We went to the schools and did festivals. And as a result of that, because we had the follow-up, here's our summer camp, here's how to sign up with it. Give us details if you want more information. And we were able to do that through the school, and the school was able to facilitate some communication through their system, not us contacting parents, but through their system. And we increased to our summer program. Pre-COVID, we were hitting 1,000 kids in our summer camp, which would run, well, 11 full weeks and 2 half weeks on either end. So that proved to us that, you know, by getting out there and doing this, it was a pain. It was a lot of work, but the value in that was definitely there. I will say, and a shout out to USTA in NorCal, when they knew what I wanted to do with these festivals, they gave me bags of rackets. This is before Net Generation. They gave me bags of rackets, bags of equipment. The school had equipment after the fact that we could utilize, and the PE coaches were able to continue with tennis in the school until we got to summertime, which is what I was really trying to hit. And once I had them in summer, then I had an opportunity to market for the fall. So our captains group, we talked about that, focus group, and we did a guided discussion. We did increase the player fee, actually went up to $35. And now when I talk to the captains and players, they understand, and we don't have any issues with them at all paying that fee. There were some issues initially, and Peg mentioned conflict resolution was tough. That became difficult. You know, at the end of the day, if you've got a stand that you need to make and you're in a community engagement process, whether it's a town hall or a focus group, you may need to hold true to what your beliefs are, or what the decisions need to be, but also give them the rationale behind what that decision is, and that will help you with the conflict resolution. The last one was staff. When I started here, we had very few people that were certified as an instructor, and it's a city organization, and most cities don't have a great reputation of providing quality instruction. And our customer service was pretty ordinary, to say the least. So I met with everybody. I had a presentation. This was actually a twofold process. We had a presentation of certification and the benefits for the staff getting certified. Well, ultimately the benefit is they're going to get paid more, and I think everybody was okay with that, so they jumped on board. But then we had a customer service process where we went into a guided discovery. I knew what I wanted, but I wanted them to come up with it, and they bought into it. And I believe our customer service now is much better. I think every time, you know, we could always do better in customer service, but we get compliments, or I get compliments from residents all the time about my staff and how well they do in helping them in the customer service process. So that gives you an idea of just some case examples. Let's open it up. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes. Let's open it up to any questions. I'm going to check the Q&A right now. Justin, partnering with municipalities for affordable programs. My assumption, Justin, is you're looking at getting access to courts to run a program, or just to gain access with the program?
Hold on just 1 second here. Justin, we'll allow you to talk here. Let me find you.
While you're doing that, Evan, I'll answer Janelle while you're getting Justin set up there. Okay. Wondering if charging fees for programming might make the participants feel it is worthwhile. Someone mentioned earlier about doing free programs. I'm a huge proponent of doing a free
Nigel,
program.
Justin, that was just a comment I had for a previous thing you were talking about. That's all. That wasn't a question. So
Gotcha.
You're good.
I got you. Thanks, buddy. Good to hear it. Yeah, about doing fee-based programs versus free programs. I'm not a proponent for free programs. I am a proponent, however, for doing a demonstration to get people interested in the program as a one-off. Kind of a taste of, and I liken it to, I just bought a car, my wife and I just bought a new car. We didn't just go and buy it and then test it out to see what it was like. We actually took it for a test drive, and that's an extreme situation. It's obviously a bigger purchase, but I definitely feel like if you're doing a new program, maybe we want to introduce it. Maybe we want to just show people what it's all about, get the buzz, and then we want to charge them. At least that's what we have to do. The city that I work for operates for profit in our recreation department, and the money goes back into our operations budget. So great question. So Peg is talking about some ideas of connecting with the broader community to capture some of the demand from all of the new people. Broader community, I think we're referring to beyond our tennis folk. I think that's what you're referring to, Peg. So I go to our Rotary groups. Most of the time it's older folk who are hanging out for some time. They do some great work. I'm not going to say that, but it's I've become part of their membership, if you will. And these people talk to other people in the community. They're actually a really good vehicle to spread communication. So I've had people call me directly and say, hey, I was talking to Bill, he's in the Rotary Club, and he said, you've got some great programs over there. So, I've got some grandkids coming in summertime. And so, I wouldn't be hesitant to reach out to any other groups that are non-tennis and just maybe start to get involved. I'm not too sure if that helps you there, Peg, but I would definitely.
If you want to elaborate on that, you can unmute. If not, just let me know either way. But if you'd like to elaborate on that, if Nigel answered your question, you can unmute and let us know.
Hey, Nigel, we got a couple other questions that just came in too.
Sure.
One in the Q&A box here, and then another one from Amadou in the chat.
Okay. I got the one from Keith, so I'll answer that as far as social distancing. We obviously that's challenging for us, but we're trying to do as many things virtually as possible. And that's just trying to keep people engaged, really, is all what it is. Our schools out here are not doing anything. They're all virtually, so we're tapping into the school market. So I've gone through the school district and asked them to provide, Zoom meeting details for anyone who wants to find out more about tennis. And that was huge around the US Open, people seeing it, hearing it on the screen. We tapped into that audience. So whatever the triggers are right now that highlight tennis, tap into, utilize those. The US Open is obviously one of them. And, for us, marketing the fact that the US Open didn't have any COVID issues, I'm not going to say any, had very little COVID issues, is a huge thing for us from social distancing. So get people active right now in tennis, and it's a good thing. I'm going to shoot over to the chat here. It's not coming up.
Yeah, the question is, Nigel, if you couldn't see it, it was from Amadou. He just mentioned that in Eastern Pennsylvania, indoor courts are pretty expensive, but parents would like to continue programming in the winter time, and just looking for any advice on how to maybe go about dealing with that problem.
Yeah, courts. I know courts are expensive. We don't suffer from that in California, so I got a luxury on that aspect. But I have heard of people back east that are renting recreation facilities to run programs as opposed to a tennis facility. Now that's easy to say, but it's also easy to do with Red Bull and things like that. So you can obviously fit more kids in there, more participants in there, and they can learn how to do it. And I think everybody knows, it's very easy to do a Red Bull with a piece of tape and a couple of chairs. As we do that. And I think Ellen and Rita did a fantastic presentation on the USPTA program for the USPTA conference. So that may be something that you all may want to look at as well. But I would definitely look at getting other indoor facilities like that. Chris Samuel, my friend from NorCal, said she rented some indoor parks centers in Seattle. So yeah, I think traditionally we always think tennis has to be done on a tennis court and a tennis ball and all that stuff, and we know it doesn't have to be done like that. But convincing people of that is difficult. I do want to be mindful of time. Evan, how are we doing on time?
We are right at noon, Nigel. And with that, I think we've actually wrapped up all of the questions. So with that being said, we can adjourn for the day here. But Nigel, I just wanted to give you the last word. But before I do that, just wanted to say thank you for presenting. Community tennis is something that is definitely something we deal with a lot here. It definitely takes a village to get the word out to as many people as possible. And so, you know, what you guys are doing at the city of Fremont is awesome. And we really appreciate it. But before we let everybody go, I'd like to give you the last word here, Nigel. And if there's anything else that you'd like to say before we adjourn for the day.
Yeah, just real quickly, I know we're at time, but thanks to Evan, Kathy, and Michael for helping out and putting this on. And you know, I've organized conferences here for PTR, and it's just the amount of work that goes into this. Unless you've done it, you really, and I don't mean to, you know, offend anybody. You really have no idea unless you've actually done it. It's quite a lot of work. So thank you to you guys. Evan does have this PowerPoint, so if anyone wants it, my email's right there as well. So if you want to, I can definitely send it to you. And if you have any other ideas, maybe that best practices, you can share that with Evan as well, and Evan can share with the group. And you know, it's all a learning experience for all of us. And hopefully you got something out of today. I did, and I'm looking forward to keeping up the interaction. So thanks again, Evan, Michael, and Kathy. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks everybody. Like Nigel said, his email address is right there. I will be sending out the slides to everybody, so keep a lookout for that. And we have one more session later this evening from Ryan Nahr at 7 p.m. tonight. So hopefully you guys will join. And then we have 2 more sessions tomorrow wrapping up the tennis conference. So thank you again for another great session. And we hope to see you at our last couple coming up.